Welcome to Chat with Sonlight, a homeschool podcast. I invite you to grab your coffee or tea and take a few moments to join us as we explore Sonlight, the curriculum, those who work behind the scenes, and the families that use it. So join us today. Hi, welcome to Chat with Sonlight. I'm Jonna, and I'm here with my good friend Judy, and we are talking about conventions today. Homeschool conventions are one of those things that people either think are in the past and don't need to go to, or they've never even heard of one. But Judy and I have years of experience with going to conventions. So first, let me introduce you to Judy. Judy?
Thanks, Jonna. I'd love to chat about conventions. You know I do. And so I'm actually a retired homeschooling mom of 3 amazing adults and currently have grandkids that are using Sonlight. So that's pretty exciting for our family. And I've actually worked attending and working conventions for Sonlight for over 25 years now.
So let me ask you, Judy. So I've been, as you know, so maybe our audience doesn't know that I do go to conventions and I work for Sonlight on the convention floor. And I probably have been doing that for almost 17 years. And, but I started my convention going back when my oldest, who will be 28 this year, was not even 2. And my husband snuck it in, said it was a parenting convention. He wanted to homeschool. I didn't have it on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
So that was back in 1995. I was going to say 2000. No, back in 1900s. Yeah, us ancient people. But Judy, tell me about your first convention you went to.
So the first convention that our family went to was actually my husband all by himself, because my situation is very similar to yours. We had good friends who started homeschooling and we prayed them through that process and that decision making. And he was so intrigued by that opportunity that I was at home with a fairly newborn baby. And he said, I think I'll go to this homeschool convention. So he did and came back all fired up to do homeschooling. And so I actually didn't attend a convention until we started homeschooling. And then I believe I went to one as a consumer. And then the following year started working for Sonlight. So yeah, I don't have a lot of non-working convention experience.
So we lived in an area, and I went to that one and our church, the parenting workshop. Mm-hmm. And then after that went to one in Kentucky. And that's where I knew about Sonlight, but I got to listen to a Sonlight speaker talk about using Sonlight with multiple kids and the little ones. And I can remember sitting in that workshop room with crying babies and Jill, our friend Jill, gave the whole talk of, yeah, you can do it. And it's easy. Don't get overwhelmed. And I still have that cassette tape to this day that talks about how to make it happen. But I have been part of conventions to the part of attending as just a mom. I've gone to big conventions. I've gone to small. Before I worked for Sonlight, I worked for our local homeschool organization and helped put on a convention. So I know what it's like on that end, being in charge of all the vendors and all the speakers and stuff. And then I got to do with Sonlight and get to go to different conventions and get to meet all the wonderful Sonlight moms. What would you say is the most important thing? I mean, when it comes to those speakers and those breakout sessions, are those important? I hear moms all the time saying, I don't really need to go to those. I know how to handle little ones, or I don't need to deal with high school yet because I have a 5-year-old. Do you think those are important?
I do, because I think certainly as homeschoolers, we're all about learning. And I don't think that is limited to our children. I think we as parents and as parent teachers need to be learning all the time as well. And I did manage to sneak in workshops here and there in those early years. And I can to this day remember workshops that I sat in by speakers who are no longer speaking, but where I just came away with some real nuggets of information that made all the difference in the world for our homeschool. So I would never say, I don't believe that I've been doing this too long, or I know everything I need to know. You can always learn something new. And, you may only come away with one thing, but where else would you have gotten that from?
So in today's digital world, where there's so often we can do online conventions and never interact in person with somebody, I think those are good, but I think there's value into personally attending a convention.
I agree.
So I think my takeaways are I can put my hands on curriculum that I can't do online, and I can flip the pages or see how it's set up. I can hear their people speak about it. They're passionate about it, which the chat person on the online is not there. Why do you think that being in person is probably more valuable than being online?
Well, I'm like you. I think there is room for the digital option because there are people who live remote and just don't have an in-person opportunity available to them. So I would never say, do away with it completely. But I think when you attend an in-person convention, there is an opportunity to interact with people, network with people, make connections, have face-to-face conversations. And I think sitting in a live speaker workshop is just different from doing it remotely, digitally. I love walking into a vendor booth and, picking up the books and smelling the wonderful smells that books have, and getting to talk not only with the representatives from the company, but with other homeschooling parents. I used to look at it like a retreat. It was my refresh for the coming year. I got excited all over again about what I was doing, because a lot of times by the end of the year, we're pretty worn out. And so
they're in the spring. They're usually spring and summer. They're right at the time you are at your wit's end, finishing up your school year. So go into one. Yes, I agree with you. The refresh is good. My husband and I used to use them as retreats. Like, even though I worked for someone, I went to homeschool conventions. We often went to one, just he and I together, and I would keep the wallet away from him because he overspent. So I already knew what I was buying, and he would buy all the swords and all the, ballistic things, backyard ballistic stuff. And can you, in all of your time, just story time, what was one of your favorite conventions you attended? Like, was it funny, a funny thing or something fun that happened while you were at a convention?
There are loads and loads of stories working for Sonlight where, we showed up and none of our materials were there to display, and you had to laugh because otherwise you'd cry. And so, there are a lot of those things, lots of good memories of late nights and traveling together as a team. But I think for me, the best conventions are those where we actually had opportunity to talk one-on-one and pray one-on-one with folks that stopped into the booth. And our whole team will tell you that they've all had the experience of talking with customers, crying with customers, hugging and praying together. And so again, that in-person experience and just the opportunity to say, yeah, just like Jill said to you when you were starting, you can do this and don't be overwhelmed. And I think that's my passion, is to convey that message to homeschool moms, especially brand new ones.
You're right, Judy. And we have those connections. One of my favorites is one convention I worked at 2 or 3 years in a row, the same one, which doesn't always work for me. You know that better than anybody. But having the same family come in, consecutive years. And I think on the second year, I was able to, you have a 4-year-old and a first grader, and you had a baby. What did you have? Because she was pregnant the year before, and she was like, how do you remember? And I'm like, I hadn't even thought about her one other time, but then she walked in and I knew exactly, and we had that connection. And like the next year she came, I love Sonlight and I love just doing, and she felt like she was walking home coming into our booth because we knew who she was and had made that connection. And that's part of Sonlight does all over the place. I feel like we're more than a curriculum company. We are that connection and that support for homeschool moms.
Agreed.
And dads across the board. And that's why we have an app. We have our Facebook groups, you know,
Mhm.
you can call our advisors and they will take the time and talk to you and find out what your unique situation is.
Mhm.
And same as what we do in the booth. You know, we
Yes,
don't expect, oh, you have a third grader, you're going to use this curriculum and you're going
right.
to have a wonderful year. It might be you use, you know, a plethora of different combinations that you could do. How many conventions do you think Sonlight is going to go to this year?
This
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
Yes, probably about 20.
So, I mean, we've gone to more in a year,
Yes.
but this year is 20 is a pretty good number for us.
Yeah.
And we're East Coast and West Coast. I know that. And we're
Mhm.
going north to Minnesota, I think.
Mhm.
Our most southern is Florida. Is that right?
South into Florida and into Texas. So yeah, we'll be down south for sure.
So, do we have any new conventions that we haven't done, either haven't done in a few years or, you know, ever?
So there is a convention that we haven't been to in a number of years in New Mexico. So
Okay.
we'll be in Albuquerque for the Cape Convention this year. I'm trying to think, most of the other ones are pretty much events that we've been doing right along. Obviously, COVID year caused some, unfortunately, to stop having conventions. And so we keep our eyes open and see if any of those decide to come back, and a couple have. So yeah, that's nothing brand new, just one that is fairly new to us because it's been so long.
Right. I couldn't remember if that was new or sort of new.
Yeah.
So one of my favorites for us to go and work is the Cincinnati convention.
Mhm.
I mean, it is very busy when you're there as a customer, and it can be very overwhelming.
Right.
I always tell customers as I talk to them, I said, when you feel overwhelmed, just come back here and breathe. We'll be fine.
Yes.
But it's fun to see all the different options that there are for homeschoolers. I still like to let my homeschool families know that I talk to different, what I see out there, you know, when I see drama stuff or elective type stuff that maybe Sonlight doesn't carry, but there are always those options. There's usually always at big conventions, some comedian or
Mhm.
someone famous speaking that, you know, you wouldn't get to Tim Hawkins and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
I remember I got to ride in the elevator with the Duggar family, and the same day I got to go see Tim Hawkins and something else all at the same day. And it was like, oh, but I was there as a person, not as Sonlight. So I was just having a
Mhm.
great day. All right, Judy, I got one more pressing question for you.
All
So
right.
if I was to be just average homeschool mama and then attending a convention that Sonlight is at, is there any advantage for me coming into the booth and talking to those people versus just ordering online?
Yes. First of all, the fact that you can talk to those people and actually put your hands on the materials that you're considering purchasing at the same time, I think is a huge benefit. Our advisors do an amazing job, but they can't hand you the materials to look at while they're talking to you. So that's definitely a plus. And then there are always financial incentives. So we typically have a $1 off coupon that we provide for people at conventions. And so you can pick one of those up in the booth. We also carry a number of Sonlight specific items like our hands-on history kits and our lap books and our homeschool planner. We will have those available for sale on the floor at a discounted price that you can't get anywhere else. You can't get that price online. You can't, it's not a promotional thing other than at conventions. So that's definitely a perk. And you can also place orders at conventions, and sometimes we have perks associated with that as well. So I think, yeah, really the advantage is twofold. Number one, being able to touch and talk at the same time so that you put your hands on the materials, and whatever convention promotions or incentivized options that are available for you would be there.
And bonus on the hands-on kits and the things, even though they're discounted, and they are greatly discounted when they're on the convention floor. You don't have to pay shipping when you pick it up at the convention floor. And I would advise, if you know, oh, I'm going and I'm going to see Sonlight at a convention and you want a hands-on kit, make it the first thing you do. get
Yes.
it from it and take it up, because I know from experience that we bring just a set amount. We don't have an unlimited amount. We don't have
Right.
storage back in our trailer or something. What we have sitting on that floor is it. And
Yeah.
we've had moms many times, they've come in, they're like, oh, I want egg, but I'm going to wait to the last day. And then
Yeah.
A's gone and we can't,
Yeah.
so, yeah. But I agree. All those things that you said, plus you get to sit down with one of our ladies they know the catalog, they know what you're using. They are all active homeschooling moms or recently veteran moms that have used Sonlight through their years, but they can sit down and help you fill your cart and help you get
Yes.
everything you need. And they can like, oh, you have 3 kids. Don't forget you want, all the extras that go with having that extra kid that's helping do the science experiments or, filling out activity sheets.
Yes. Yeah.
Use those resources because we're bringing them to you. You want
That's
to use
right.
them. Judy, I could talk conventions all day, and you know that. I love going to conventions. It's one of the favorite parts of my job is being on that convention floor, get to talk to mamas and just get to see all the families. I know that you will be at several conventions. I will be at several conventions this year. I hope if you have listened to this podcast that you come and find us at a convention, let us know that you saw us or tell whatever ladies are there. And we would like to hear from you. If you have ideas for this podcast, you have a suggestion, and always know that Sonlight prays for our families, but let me know. Just email connections@sonlight.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. Bye.